Hi, everyone. It's time for the Ask Vanessa Anything segment, and we're so excited to have folks sharing their questions and asking really important, um, sort of probing questions that help us to better understand and make sense of this journey of being a parent in these times. And I don't know about you, but whenever I'm faced with changes in a schedule, like the transition from school year to summer, or like things that are cyclical, like things that are exciting, like we're in a year for the Olympics, or there's all these maybe life changes happening within your own family. We're in an election year, and now the news cycle is starting to really heat up. It can add a lot of stress and difficulty to daily life with kids. And I think it's important that we have these live sessions and that folks do things like join communities where we can be making sense of current events, whether it's something really exciting or something really troubling, like a recent you know current event like school shooting, or maybe there's been a change in a law that impacts your child, and all these other things that can be coming our way. So thank you for being here, joining live, and checking out what it means to be in community with other minded people. And in order for this to be a community, we always love participation. So if you're on this as a live participant or as part of the recording, feel free to participate in the chat, in the comments. Let add your own questions so I can interact with you live and give you support for showing up. I love that. And when we get started here, be listening too for things in these questions that you can relate to, because you're in it too. You're in this journey. You're not alone. You're with other families who are also trying their best to raise kids that are resilient, who are confident, who are capable, who really want their kids to be successful in all the ways, not just one way. For example, not just socially and emotionally, but to be able to make friends and to make sense of their feelings and have good self-awareness and self-expression, but perhaps also to strive and meet their potential, right? Like how they're going to be able to reach those goals, having motivation, having resilience in the face of adversity, being able to advocate for themselves, etc. And set a goal and strive for it, and know that it's good to want things and to need support along the way, and to be open to learning new things. And this is what I've been hearing too, by the way, from folks who have been working with me for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, even 5 years, is that once they make this shift and they really anchor it into their family system, it's almost impossible to go back. Like you can have slips and you can regress for a period of time, but it's like once you've identified as an aspiring parent, a parent who wants to become the best version of themselves in parenting, it's usually a permanent shift, and it's really powerful. So see if you can step into some of that today as you're listening to some of my coaching and guidance around some questions that have been brought to me. These questions are from new members of our Facebook groups. If you want to find us, we are Raising Our Resilience Parent Group on Facebook, and also from other folks who have taken our quiz, the Parenting Strengths quiz, have also illuminated some questions that they have about how to navigate this whole adventure of parenting. So if that's you, I'll put the link in the chat so you'll have a chance to see this, and explore it as well. And real quick plug, we do have a few spots left for our July cohort of the Family Foundations Immersion. We had a whole wave of grads decide to renew for a second, third, fourth, and even fifth year. And then we had some new clients that joined earlier in the year. And we have just a few spots left for some folks who are just going to be making it in just in time before this cohort closes. So if that's you, you'll also want to consider not only taking the quiz, but getting on my schedule really soon. Okay, so you'll be, having 30-minute consultation with me, totally complimentary. We'll go over your quiz results and we'll see if it's a fit for us to, dive into some real mentorship this year. Like maybe this is your year to tackle your routines and get clear on expectations and establish how you're going to solve and address conflicts in your family. And maybe that starts with the adults, maybe that starts with the kids, maybe it's a simultaneous process. We won't know till we meet and we figure that out together and see what that learning path could look like, and that path of like growth and change and transformation, really, for you and your family. So do consider checking out the quiz. That'll give you a feel for what the curriculum is like, and also give you a sense to take inventory of your own strengths and challenges, and kind of get a little sense of your score of like where you are in your learning journey as a parent. And then also hop on my calendar. I just opened some spaces for this week and in a couple weeks as our doors are closing to the program. So please check those out. All right. Now diving into the questions, we have, let's see, quite a few to get through today. So I'm excited to get started. This is from Monica. So Monica shares that she is a stay-at-home mom, and her kid still naps, and she's trying to figure out how are we going to navigate this relationship where I am at home all the time. I'm trying to figure out how I can make time for myself, how I can also make time for my kid, and not really sure how that's going to happen. Well, it's important that you first of all have a way to get your needs met every single day. And when I'm talking about needs, I mean like fundamental basic needs like making sure that you get your like your calories for the day, that you have enough rest, and really having that be just as important as anything you're doing for your child. Okay. And the reason I want to emphasize that is that often when we are, we've been kind of entrained by our children to always be attuning to their immediate needs. What can very quickly be deprioritized is our own needs. And I think we're really good at, potentially like creating structure for our kids around what they need, but then we leave ourselves out of that picture. And so like when you make your kids routine, I even have some of my clients do this who are really, especially really like very much need to have some structure in place for themselves or they will slip. That like alongside, okay, baby feeding time is also when I, get on the phone with my mother to chat with her about, what's going on in our family, because that's really something that really helps me. When baby, or child or toddler is anchored into an activity, I'm going to give myself a 10-minute block to like go outside, breathe some air, like where I can still hear them, get calm, get centered, do a little stretching or movement, whatever feels good to you, and just like have a moment with yourself. Building in where like a co-parent or a caregiver, when they arrive, or like let's say you have a nanny or somebody coming over to help, a family member or your co-parent, work it out so that you have at least 15 minutes in the morning, or if it has to be, it's okay, it's in the evening, to yourself, where it's like they have everything covered. You're getting out of team mode, like kind of a pass off or like a handoff, or like kind of a honey, I got this, go on your walk, or go sit with your tea and your book, and actually claim some time for yourself. Some families have found it successful to do to sign up for like a class, right? So a yoga class or exercise class, or maybe join a book club or something that's structured, where you will feel not only committed to yourself, but also to others. So I really want you to make sure that's built in there. Sometimes this slips. And before you know it, you're looking at the time you spend in caregiving mode versus caregiving for yourself, caring for self mode, and the ratio is way off. So we want to make sure that we're, 60 40, 70 30, 80 20 if we have to, but definitely not 90 10 or 100 0, friends. It doesn't work. We have to have some resources to be able to be resourced for our kids. And they want to see a model of like that, like life is okay, that we can handle stress, that we're capable of that, and we are a good thought partner for how they want it for them to handle their own stressors and balance their own time in their own life. The other thing I want to say about nap is that sometimes we put too much like too much rides on nap happening, and then that can even create some tension in the heading to nap time. And then when the kid senses that there's more to this than just, oh, it's time for me to rest, sometimes power struggles come up and we end up having nap issues. So when that happens, you might want to consider what it's like to space out some of the things that you're relying on nap time for in chunking it into smaller chunks. So let's say you're counting on nap time to clean the kitchen and get the kitchen reset. Well, disaster if nap doesn't happen, right? So what I suggest is that you have these little micro practices that are little bursts of effort alongside this bigger like project time. So for example, it could be as simple as you don't put a dish in the sink without rinsing it. You just like take the 30 seconds of rinse, 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 right? That was like 5 seconds. Rinse, and just do the 30 seconds of rinsing. Even if kid is crying and upset at you or whatever, take care of it so that if and when your nap time is half the time you thought it was, a quarter of the time you thought it was, or you don't get to have it at all, you're not then completely snowed in, okay, or flooded, right, with too much to do. And so that's one thing that I've seen really work for families, especially of young kids with naps. The other thing is to still institute a quiet hour, even if the child doesn't fall asleep. And I know this is possible because I've seen it work in toddler programs and preschool programs and even kindergartens, where even if a kid is too old for a nap, they still get that quiet time. And I helped many clients with this, especially with siblings of like a 2.5, 3-year-old and a 4.5, 5-year-old. And well, the little one would reliably take the nap. The older one was starting to grow out of it. Those of you who've been there or are there, you know what I'm talking about. But they still established a quiet hour. And that quiet hour, it took time to establish, and it took some training and some reinforcement of what this time is for, what it's not for, how many times you can come out of your room to, ask for something. And it's possible though. And it was such a game changer for the stay-at-home mom that I was coaching many years back. She said it's like she felt like she got her life back in a way, because it was just a break. She felt more capable of being patient, less likely to lose her temper or even do things like yell or get sort of those like empty threats and punishments and sort of things that were flying around in the afternoons if she didn't get that time, right? So how do you do that? First of all, you need to explain what quiet hour is, what it looks like. So paint a picture and do some walkthroughs of it. And this goes for any routine you're trying to establish. So say what it is, explain it, explain what they can do. So it's like, for example, you can start with, this is time where we spend quiet time in your room. Mommy will be there for part of it, but we'll also leave. And when I leave, it's time for you to stay in your room and relax and enjoy the quiet. If we can put on some soft music, we can look at some books, and you can start with kind of phasing into, right, kind of what I like to call scaffolding by step to the place where you can actually say, okay, it's time, quiet time in your room for, and I'll set the timer and put it in by your door so you can see how much time is left, and the kid will just go and do it, and you get a whole hour. And this is with like a 4 or 5-year-old. So it's possible. So those are some pieces there that will help build patience. Monica, who's really asking for this help. The other thing is, we can set up the environment differently. And this was in my podcast episode, season 1 with Krista Lockwood. We talked about building more child independence through decluttering. And what we were really talking about, even though decluttering is like this popular word, we both acknowledged it in the episode. Go check it out on the Calm Empowered Parent if you haven't yet seen the podcast. And should we break it down that it's really more about kids having the right amount of stuff around them so that they're not overstimulated or understimulated. And it's actually a manageable amount of pieces and bins and drawers and numbers of just items that they could clean it up themselves. And that being kind of our bar, because I can't tell you what your 3-year-old can clean up. I can guess, But it's really a bit of trial and error of trying a certain number of things and seeing if they can manage to put them away. Of course, I have some other ideas of how to anchor kids into activities where they will not only stay with them and do some independent work time, but also can like manage it in a way where they feel really happy about putting something away before they get something new out. It's something we had to do in the classroom because we had space constraints. We couldn't have every kid having 3 activities out. It just wouldn't work. And so, especially in these like quiet times or just trying to like build a peaceful environment where it's easier to be patient, I know the cleaning up and like getting ahead or staying on top of at least that cycle of getting things out, putting things away, can be a really big part of that. All right. So since your child is napping, Monica, I'm assuming they're on the younger side. Hopefully we've given you and other folks some ideas around how to support young children and that patience that it requires to be with kids all day long. It's really not that easy. That's why everybody, even teachers and preschool care providers, et cetera, need breaks. We do. Like you can't just power through it. It's not possible. Okay. It's not sustainable, I should say. You can power through it, but I don't recommend it. Okay. Next question from Lizzy Holiday. So Lizzy asks, our 6-year-old, let me say that again. Okay. So Lizzy asks, our 6-year-old really struggles with emotional regulation and impulse control. How can we help him with his struggles and stay regulated ourselves when he's testing our boundaries? Oh, I love this. Okay. So 6-year-olds are interesting. They are in between, in a sense, kind of bridging 2 different developmental planes that are really significant. As a Montessori educator, I'm really familiar with the 3 to 6 and then the 6 to 9 age bands, because that's how a lot of Montessori schools organize their classrooms. So they can have a mixed age classroom, and 6-year-olds get to have that transition into their old, like kind of lower elementary, kindergarten sort of time, really be acknowledged with a graduation, with getting to be an elder in the preschool setting, the 3 to 6 setting. And there's a reason for that. Every single year, when I was a preschool teacher, I would feel my 5.5-year-olds, 6-year-olds shift right around early spring. And you can feel that they're really ready to have more responsibility and more input on how things run. So one thing I'm always curious about when a 6-year-old is testing boundaries is, have we enlisted their help enough in sort of co-designing and co-determining things like the routines? Are we giving enough choices so they have input? Are we really listening to them and connecting with them to understand what they need before they can transition or before they can get out of this more impulsive, dysregulated mode? They are starting to become more viable thought partners, but they're just at the beginning of it. So this is where scaffolding is even more important. Are these transition years, like at 3, at 9, at 3, at 6, at 9, at 12, at 15. We really have to sort of build in these baby steps of climbing the ladder into this next stage, because they're going to do some flip-flopping. So sometimes they'll be acting like 3, and sometimes they'll be trying to act like 9, and it can be tricky. So we want to make sure that we're giving them opportunities to input. And then we're going to make sure that our expectations are meeting what they can actually handle, not only at 6, but at this moment, because of that flip-flopping from 3, like, kind of regressing and trying to step into an older child sort of shoes. So what I want you to think about is, which like emotional regulation practices do you think would be most useful for him when you're in the moment, as a place to start? And I would even scaffold that. So like a 3-year-old, it's hard to ask them what works for them. Some precocious 3-year-olds know. They'll even tell you to take deep breaths because that's what works for them. Or they'll tell you, do you want a hug? Because it's what works for them, that pressure and that closeness. But if your kid hasn't been broadcasting very obviously what they need for a tool for kind of down regulating when they're dysregulated, that's project number 1. And I love helping families with that. That's like one of the things we work on first when this is up for them, this emotional regulation piece. So if you're not working with somebody, I would recommend, consulting with somebody. It could be someone like me, etc. And going through like the tried and true tools. You can also go to my website, vanessacallahan.com, and go ahead and get my free guide for 6 tools that kids love. And even check out the Raising Our Resilience Instagram channel at Raising Our Resilience. I walk through some of the fun tools there. You can check that out. And then here's the secret sauce though. We're really tempted to focus on our kids when it comes to regulation, getting them to calm down. But sometimes the most instructive thing you can do is to try out these tools for yourself in front of them. We'd like to call it role modeling. So role model and show more than tell, right? Self-regulation, emotional regulation tools, so that they can have the opportunity to see how it works without the pressure of being open to trying something new in the moment. I have so many times taken a 4 square breath, or taken a lion's breath, done a lion's breath, or done a tense and release tool, or kind of redirected my attention somewhere else and taken a break from the topic, or asked for help. There's all these ways, positive self-talk, these are all in the guide, that to help myself through an emotional moment in front of a kid. And oftentimes we forget how powerful it can be to not only do it, but say what you're like, describe what you're doing. And that's something I also love helping parents become really good at, which is, it's called emotion coaching, where you coach yourself out loud, you coach your kid through their emotion, help them connect the dots of like how they're feeling, what they need, what works best for them, and actually getting to a place where they can settle their nervous system enough to then make sense of their feelings, express what they might like now know and understand about where that feeling came from, and maybe even problem solve together from there. It's really powerful. It builds so much trust and mutual respect. I highly recommend becoming an excellent emotion coach. And that's one of the important things you can do. And one of the pieces of that I gave you today is to really explore which tools work the best in the moment, even from like almost like a scientist perspective of like, oh, I wonder if this will help. I wonder how this will feel. And it can be like, it's okay if it's like, I don't like it. It's like, okay, that may not be the tool for this moment or for you at all. Let's try something different. And then, sometimes it's like, okay, you don't need to try anything. I'm going to try it. And you try it and you do it. And then it's helpful in the moment to maybe get lids back on, right? Cool down. One thing I want to say too about testing boundaries is accept that it's part of growing up. Oftentimes we immediately get triggered and get very judgmental and very critical, and even feel like it's a reflection, self-criticism when kids are testing our boundaries, like they should already know this. They used to know this. What's wrong with them now? They're being they're being naughty. I'm a bad parent. I'm an ineffective parent. And these are all fair emotions and fair thoughts. I do want to say though, that they're less helpful than some other thoughts, such as, and I love doing this in workshops, by the way, where we write up the unhelpful thoughts, the criticisms, the myths of parenting, right? Like your kid cries, you must be a bad parent, sort of stuff that I just can't stand. So unfair. We cross them out and we replace them with better things, like this child is likely under-resourced and needs something, and the parent is trying to figure that out with them, right? My child is still learning how to accept that they can't have everything they want when they want it. There's a learning edge here. There's a learning, there's a lesson that's being learned right now, and I'm here to help with that. And sometimes being firm with a boundary and loving and kind and giving them choices is the way to help them learn. It's not always to give in, because then they're not learning about how the world works, right? So focusing on what they're learning, saying something compassionate to yourself about like, this makes sense. It's a hot day. We're all tired. This is our last thing that we need to get done before we finally get to go home and have some downtime. No wonder people are cranky. Like, this is just what makes sense. We're not going to judge it. We're not going to give them a hard time for it. We're definitely not going to tease them for it. Just going to say, wow, there's a lot going on here. I'm sorry. Let's see if we can work through this, right? And then, sometimes boundary testing is not from an under-resourced place. It's literally to find out how power and attention works. And sometimes it's also very impulsive. It's not something that they're doing consciously. And so sometimes just pointing it out to them can be helpful. Seems like you really want to know whether or not you can get away with X, Y, or Z. Or it seems like you really want to know what happens if you blank, blank, blank. and just bringing it their snapping into their awareness that this is even a thing that's happening, and maybe even naming it in a way that's not just stop that, right? Can help them to go, oh, I guess I am trying to figure that out, or like, oh, you got me, and that shifts the conversation. It shifts the dynamic right there. Okay, lots to play with here on boundaries and emotional regulation, impulsivity. Also, anytime someone says that their kid is having a hard time with impulse control, it reminds me of my coaching team. I have a very talented occupational therapist on my team who helps a lot with this piece, and can also help you suss out if this is something that maybe goes beyond just like regular parenting strategies, and that you might actually be looking at pursuing some assessments just to see if there's something else going on here that could be treated. So just wanting to put a word out, a plug for if you are trying a lot of these strategies already, if you're listening to what I'm saying, you're like, I know, I do that, I do that, I do that. I've even tried charts, I've even tried this. Might be time to bring in some professional help. And that could be someone like me and my team, like my occupational therapist and myself and my whole coaching team, or it could be someone else. But it might be time to bring in some support, because you really don't have to struggle with it on your own. And I think it's really important for parents to understand that, like, this is literally a job you've never done before. So why would you already know how to do it? Yeah. So yeah, maybe someone who's been working with kids for 20 years and has seen hundreds of families would be useful, right? Maybe that's why you're listening to this recording right now, or why you've already been reading and enlisting help in your life around this and other things related to parenting that you don't have a lot of experience with. Like, how human of you to want a mentor, to want support. Here we have another parent who has a child of a similar age, who is a 7-year-old. And I'm going to read their question in just a moment. But it's just a really good time that if you're listening and you're here, that you just drop a comment in the chat and let me know, like, what comes to mind for you as you're hearing these things. Any questions that you have, if you're on Zoom, on Facebook, go ahead and please share them so I can see them, and hopefully in time to support you with your question. I'd love the opportunity to do that. All right. So next question. All right, so this is from a mom who has a 7-year-old who experiences a lot of feelings of shame and wants to help him overcome those feelings. Their name is Liron. Really good to have your question on a specific emotion. Really like these. Helps me get a picture of what might be going on for your child. When a 7-year-old is experiencing shame, oftentimes it's like has to do with embarrassment and a sense of, I don't know if I belong anymore. Like, if my behavior has pushed me out of a lovable category into an unlovable category. And that's why shame is a lot heavier than embarrassment, and can last longer and have a deeper impact on a child's sense of self and sense of worth and sense of value in a family. So this is, when you see this happening, I'm really glad that you're paying attention. First of all, good job putting a name to it and getting curious about it. That's going to do a lot for your child. They need that from you. They need you to sort of be with them in their journey of shame. And what I want to say, first of all, is you can be very reassuring, but don't expect it to resolve in a single conversation. This is really important. Because I think of, like, when I've noticed kids who experience shame, think of it as like a heavy cloud, and it takes some time for the sunshine to, like, kind of burn up and evaporate the cloud, like for the cloud to lift and clear and for the sunshine to get through. So be patient with your comfort with a child who's experiencing shame, and try not to rush them. So what I mean is, like, if you think of it as like a ladder they need to climb, or like, let's go back to the cloud analogy, like the clouds need to burn off. The first layer that needs to burn off is, I'm here and it's okay that you have this feeling, right? And I'm here to listen. And because you feel this way doesn't mean that I'm going away, right? Like, I'm going to stay close to you. I'm also not going to push you to feel differently yet. I'm just going to hear and I'm listening, and you can just let them know that you're so glad that they told you. So glad they told you, or they're so glad that they're letting you sit with them, or it's really good to be with them. Like, it can be that basic. Okay. First layer. when you feel them settling into the fact that you really are there and you really are, caring and comforting, then you might go into a layer deeper and share an observation. It's a really neutral thing usually. So it's like, I noticed that when this happened, you did these things. So it's like, I noticed that when mom and dad gave you some feedback about, how you've been um, treating your sister lately, I noticed that your body kind of got heavy and you put your head down and your cheeks got red and then you didn't want to talk anymore for the rest of the night. And yeah, and then you can ask, like what was going on for you and see if they'll open up to you. If they're not ready to open up yet, that's okay. You can tell them that. It's okay if you don't want to talk about it yet. I just want you to know that, and this is where you can reassure them that it's okay to have that feeling. Maybe it's a little bit of embarrassment, maybe a little shame. And you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay stuck in it. I'm here for you. And even no matter how you behave, even if I don't like your behavior, and we can say we, if there's another caregiver in this example I've given, it's a mom and a dad. We still love you. We love you very much. And you can even name a few things that you're proud of them for. I'm really proud of you for being brave and sticking up for yourself with your sister. I'm really proud that you are even sitting here with me and having this and sitting with this difficult emotions, difficult feeling. That takes a lot of courage. Let them quiet, just be with them, and maybe they'll seek a little snuggle or a little comfort. Let you hug them, let you put your arm around them. Maybe they'll even just put their head on your shoulder. I've seen that with my stepdaughter back in the day, and they're just feeling like, oh, you got me. And sometimes the hug is like not like a squeeze hug. It's like a hold me while I just feel held up. And when you feel that, that's a good sign. That means they're allowing themselves to be vulnerable with you, to be seen. This is all very healthy. Next layer might look like bringing in some of the sunshine and maybe troubling some of the deeper fears or feelings around it. All siblings fight. All siblings have disagreements. It doesn't make either of you good or bad, right or wrong necessarily. It's just a normal thing that like siblings have to work it out. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes one of you gets in trouble, sometimes the other one gets in trouble. And we understand that, and we love both of you equally. And we know that in this case, we came down pretty hard on you, but that's also because we were seeing something we didn't like and we really need to address it eventually. Right now, I want to make sure you feel okay, and we will have that talk. And then maybe you can take some responsibility for the way you said something. I didn't mean to, or like I didn't mean to. Maybe it's like next time I'll really think about how much it impacts you when we give you feedback in front of your sibling. That seemed to really not work for you. Or maybe if we give you feedback, we need to do it in a more constructive or kind way, so that it doesn't feel like we're just embarrassing you in front of your sibling as a punishment. That's not what we're after here. We just want everyone to learn from these conflicts, right? So you've got these layers you're moving through. And eventually, though, you want them to know that even when they make mistakes, even, especially when they make mistakes, they're very lovable because they're being a human, they're trying things, they're taking risks, there's something about their personality that's still developing. Maybe they're trying on something, some attitude, some instigation, some provocateur kind of role, whatever it is. Maybe it's lying, it's cheating, it's stealing. Like we've seen all of it in our coaching. My gosh, in all my years in the classroom and step parenting, seen it all. So that's normal. We're here for it. And we're going to get through this together. And I'm going to clean up my side of the street as a caregiver to make sure that I'm not being unduly harsh or shaming. And we're going to find a way through this where, you understand the lesson that you need to learn here and maybe some replacement behavior, some other ways of getting your needs met, other ways of getting a rise out of your sister that are fun, other ways of getting your sister to listen to you that are safe and aren't so harsh, right? Etc. And guess what? You're modeling for your child how to do that for other people, right? So instead of when you see somebody starting to feel sad and embarrassed, instead of teasing them more or giving them a harder time, you recognize that you've gone too far and you pull back and you take care of them and you reassure them. What a great skill. So we're going to really set them up for a lot of social and emotional success in their future relationships with friends, future romantic partners, coworkers. Like that's the kind of person I would want to hang out with more. So let's keep that ball rolling in their young years. And I think also enlist help, let other people in on the fact that this isn't just like, because sometimes we want to see our kids feel a little embarrassed if they really make a mistake, because it helps them sort of go, oh shoot, I did something wrong, and maybe course correct and self-evaluate a little bit and be a little bit motivated to be better. But shame is shifting into this other place that can have a longer lasting effect on their self-esteem and self-worth. And so if you're really seeing that in your child or children, please make sure you're signaling to other caregivers that there's this area that we're working on, and we're doing it in a very kind and affirming way that's really supportive and forgiving and understanding, even while it's being firm. But we're just like staying away from anything that could be like comparison to others, publicly shaming them or embarrassing them, telling them that they're going to tell, like telling them that you'll tell on them to a lot of people. How's that going to look to other people? Like those kinds of things we're going to put on the shelf right now. It's a little too heavy-handed as we're getting into that shame territory. Okay. All right. Next question is a little more general, but I still love it. I'm going to just share it in the Facebook group and then get it going here. All right. So next question. How can I help my 8-year-old work through his meltdowns? Asks Abby. I love this because you are acknowledging perhaps that you're not talking about a 3-year-old meltdown. An 8-year-old meltdown should and can and will, for most of us, look and feel differently than like a 3 or 4-year-old melting down. So thank you for sharing the age of your child, Abby. That really puts it into some context. 8-year-olds are really difficult to see melting down, tantruming, or getting like losing their cool in a way that leads to anything really dramatic or very physical, because we have in our minds that they're too old for this. And in some ways, they could be sort of regressing. Maybe they're under-resourced, and so their higher cognition is sort of offline. So they really are like reverting to a younger version of themselves. Maybe they have a stack of tension, hurt, or anger that's been building for them. And so this is an explosive event because, or a really dramatic event because of what's built up for them. What I can say about an 8-year-old is that they can be upset about being upset, and then they can be upset about how you respond to their upset. So it becomes more complex and layered. And I think even younger kids will experience all those things, but they'll probably be less likely to have them on the front of their mind and or articulate that to you. So what makes sometimes 8-year-old meltdowns complex is they have a stronger idea of how they should be feeling about a thing, and they have a stronger idea about how their environment should be responding to their emotion. And they can have more complex desires or needs that need to be met before they feel like they can kind of let it go or, accept being soothed or sort of move through and make sense of the emotion. So get ready for the ride. This is not usually a one moment solve, right? Because there are layers. And one of the things that 8-year-olds really appreciate, if you do it very consistently, is that when they arrive at their meltdown, if you've been doing this practice called connecting before correcting, which is the Jane Nelson positive discipline version, but also like even connecting before criticizing, connecting before giving feedback, connecting before directing, connecting before even requesting sometimes, then you'll have a baseline of connection that will give you enough like sort of rapport that even during a meltdown, you can get enough information to understand the layers of what's needed here. Because sometimes it'll look like this. Child is having a meltdown, scream crying about something that happened at school, they're falling apart. And you already have a rapport around the fact that they get hangry at this time of day. Snacks are really important. That they get overheated. That's something you've already talked about, right? So they look like their cheeks are flushed and they're hangry. There's some really basic things that need support, and you already have some rapport around, ooh, let's get some snacks. And, like you even might have a little thing of like, feed the beast, let's feed a little beast. Let's make sure your little hangry monster is fed. And you could even just say, here, have some orange slices and some water and a handful of almonds before we talk about this more, for example. Or maybe it's not hangry, maybe it's hot, right? So like, let's cool down, let's turn on the AC for a few minutes in the car and let the fan do the work right now. It's going to be okay. Let's cool you down. And if you're 8-year-old and you don't have that rapport, they might be so mad at you for not really taking their complaint seriously, and instead we're like doing kind of young methods of like, oh, you're probably just hungry, right? First of all, don't say it like that. That's very condescending to their experience. You're just something. It's like, well, maybe, but let's find out together, right? How about we try this? It's a lot better. And then coming back to the emotion, help them figure out the message that's coming through the feeling. Like, help an 8-year-old trust that this emotion might have some validity. There's a message there that's something that maybe has been building up that needs to be said or felt or, expressed to another party, even in order for the source of this hurt and the subset to be resolved. And I'd be really open to help, being that guide for them, another emotion coaching tool that will help them make sense of it, right? So maybe they're sad and there's something they had, but now they don't have it and they're really sad about it and they miss it and they're making sense of that. These are these core emotion messages I love to teach to all my clients, or maybe something else. Okay, so help them find the message this emotion has for them so they can make meaning of it. And then once the lid is back on and you're making sense of it, you can help them understand what they could do about it so they don't necessarily have to experience this again, whether that's proactive snack eating, stepping out of the sun as soon as you start to feel your cheeks get hot, which is more on the physical side of things, physiological, sort of management. Or if it's emotional management, it's like, wow, it seems like if you let this friend tease you 3 times in a row and you don't say anything, then that really builds up in your system. So it seems like it's good for us to maybe practice what to say the first or second time. And why don't we work on that I statement or whatever tool you end up using? I have so many, but whatever tool you use to go back and kind of, have a constructive conflict resolution. And when you do that enough times, oftentimes you at least get a sense of what is possible when your child is resourced and has had emotion coaching and has had some mentorship and some opportunities to practice tools. Now, if these meltdowns are still happening, they're still very frequent. They're lasting a very long time. They are also very intense. So if we're talking about frequent, it's daily, or every other day, really big meltdown, or more frequent, they're lasting 15, 20 minutes or more. Their intensity is like inconsolable, right? 7, 8, 9, even 10 out of 10, and they stay at that level even after these interventions. You need to talk to I would recommend anyway, a professional, and have them take a closer look at what's going on, and make a plan for the next 2 weeks and start tracking data to make sure we're trending in a different direction. And that can be a pediatric physician, it can be an MFT, occupational therapist, a school counselor, a parenting coach like myself. I've definitely worked this through with so many families, and I tackle things like, how can the routine support this child? How can we shift the expectations so they're more fair? How can we emotion coach this kid in the moment so they can build skills? There's all these different pieces that I love working with when it comes to meltdowns. So there's a lot for you, Abby. Hopefully there's something here you can try right away. And if you do see, though, that you are making these interventions and you're not seeing the frequency, duration, and intensity shifting, please do reach out either to myself or another professional you'd like to get a consultation from. Okay. And there is a way that you can go to my website and not only get a free guide, but also click on the parents section, and there's a complimentary strategy session you can sign up for. So we'd love to see you taking me up on that. Since we haven't met before, Abby, that's for you. Okay. And folks like you. All right. Next question. What's the best way to navigate the journey of tweens wanting to fit in above all else? And this comes from Alicia. Alicia, I really appreciate this. And I like your language around fitting in because I think it's very accurate for what tweens are up to. So they're trying to figure out their identity outside of the family unit. So we have to understand that and embrace that that is their work right now. That's the work of their developmental stage. Where do I fit in outside of my family unit? What is my identity separate from my family unit? So we call it individuation. So then first they're individuating when they're much younger as a physically sovereign person, right? I do, right? Toddlers, early preschoolers. And then they're like, what does this world do? And what can it do for me? And that's really preschool, 3 to 6. 6 to 9, they're like, how can I participate meaningfully in my culture, right? Like whether that's how my classroom runs, or how how the play goes with my friends, or what the theme of the month is, and in our like food at home, or whatever it is. They really love to have input into how things are going. And then right around 9, they're like, I'm my own man. I'm my own woman. They really have this sort of like swagger about them, where they can have a little bit more of that sort of smirk on their face, a little more smug, a little more, sort of like entertained by their own wit. They can like kind of sit back from the family dynamic and want to be kind of doing their own thing, like not their own thing because they're so just in their bubble and immersed in it, but because they really want to have a separate identity from the family. So why are they trying to fit in with other tweens? Well, they are trying to fit in with other like versions of what it can be to be like 11 and 12, right? Like, and try that on. And especially if it's in contrast to something that, their younger sibling is up to. And I've had kids go to school for like even just a month and come back and be like, I don't play Pokemon anymore, to their siblings. I've only played Magic the Gathering. Like, why? What happened? But it's actually really healthy and important for the kids to branch out. And you notice that's still a card game. It's still social. It's still off screens. So, I mean, and they have this group of friends they're playing with. And now they're like trying to get all the decks, and they're putting pressure on you. That's the part we don't like. But really, it's a pretty healthy step into a version of individuation that is within the realm of, things we can get on board with. When it's tricky is when they're trying to fit in a way that is counter to their own well-being, right? Or it is like a kind of encouraging them to take on like a less sort of synergistic or aligned personality quality, right? Like being snarky, or pretending you don't care about things you do care about, kind of these like playing cool kind of personality traits. And I think giving them a reasonable response from the environment that's not overly anxious, please. Not being like, oh no, you're turning into a horrible person, right? And we freak out and like come down on them really hard, might actually push them further into that space where it's like, I don't care. Why do you care so much? Right. So you see the contrast, it's like too stark. So what I would say is care, but not too much. Care, and just like let them know, like have a reasonable response of like, wow, you're saying things that are pretty hurtful right now, and it's not that fun to be around. And just like, and say like, if this continues, we're gonna like really need to talk about it, honey. And then give them some space to just let that land. Don't try and convince them that they should not spend time with these friends or not be this person they're trying on. It might give them more to push back on. And when you push on someone's hand in a workshop, I've done it before, that you say, put up your hand, you put your hand on their hand, and you give a little tension to push, they 9 times out of 10, they'll push back to hold their ground. So don't give them something to like hold their ground about really intensely, but do give them some honest, heartfelt feedback. And you can also let them know that you see what they're up to. Hey, I get it. When I was your age, or even you don't have to say that, you can say, it's always interesting to try new things, and it seems like you're kind of trying on this attitude, you're kind of trying on this way of talking, or you're getting into some new things. Cool. I get that. That's great. That you're exploring. And I want you to do that. And it's like the yes and game. And I do have to say that some of the things that you're saying and doing, like try to be more objective, right? Like when you say this to your sister and just tell them that Pokemon is dumb now, whatever it is that you are worried, like that is bringing up the worry or the concern, or like when I see you not taking showers anymore, because that's what a couple of your friends are doing, like it does bring up concerns for me. And it's my job to tell you what those are. And if we need to have a more serious conversation about it, we can. But right now, I just like you to know what's on my mind about it, and some food for thought. Yeah. But let a few things go. This is a disorganized time. Like they're like toddlers in the amount of reorganization that's happening in their brain. Like synapses are dying and being reconnected, like at an incredibly fast pace. And that's why they're moody. They need more sleep. They need more food. Some days they don't even seem like themselves, and other days they'll just be super emotional. They'll just cry a lot. So if those things are happening, just know that there's a lot of hormones going on, hormone time, and this is normal, and they'll get through it. And they need a steady, firm, and loving, supportive, and demanding presence. And you can be that. If that sounds really hard for you, I recommend getting some support. Hang out with some other parents who are going through the same thing, who are trying to figure it out too, so you feel less alone with it. It's a ride, and you got to like hold on. And it's not sometimes better when you have other people on the ride with you, whether that's people that are like you consider peers or like-minded, who are also riding through this and also trying to make sense of it from a compassionate, sane place, sane making place, or if it's with a mentor or two or three. This can also be a decent time to bring in therapy or counseling into your family, so your tween has somebody that they've established a rapport with heading into their teen years. So for some families, that's really supportive too. So yeah, consider these things, see how it supports you. Alicia, let us know if you have other questions, and we're here for it. Okay, so one more question from Claire. Let me just make sure got this tagged on Facebook. There we go. All right. My kids have a way of triggering bad marriage memories for me. How can I overcome those triggers? It's a really personal question, Claire, and I commend you for asking it. First of all, the fact that you have awareness that you're being triggered is really helpful, because sometimes it's just a raw emotion that comes up and we don't understand why this emotion is here. And we can even take that out on the people, in this case, your kids, who triggered the emotion. So I'm so proud of you, and so impressed that you're able to name and be specific about what it is that you're experiencing. And that's really important. You also seem to have a good sense of like ownership of this, and knowing that it's something that you want to resolve within yourself. And that's where I think the language trigger is really helpful, because it's something that lives within ourselves based on past experience. And what we know about triggers from, the studies of like Paul Ekman's lab, and even the Dalai Lama has, gotten involved in this sort of self-awareness campaign that's been helping folks to make sense of their emotional experiences. We know that a trigger is not just an event. It's the event combined with our perceptual experience, sorry, let me say this. Let me start this part over, okay? It is a combination of a trigger is a combination of the event itself, our preconditions. So, whether we're resourced or not, whether we're hungry, tired, angry, lonely or not, whether we're overwhelmed or not, whether we've already been here before, or like not been here before, but like in the last, hour or so, this is something that's been coming up over and over. These are all preconditions to this moment of being triggered. And then there's also your perception database, Paul Ekman likes to call it, that you're drawing from, that is helping you to interpret the event. Okay. So when these three things combine, that's a trigger. And then from the trigger is a shift in physiological state and psychological state. So psychologically, like what emotion is coming up, how your brain is sort of processing that emotion, the thoughts that you're thinking, And then physiologically, it's this physical shift, heartbeat, blood pressure, where the heat is in circulation in your body. Like things really shift when you're triggered, right? It could be like a panicked racing feeling, or it can be a sinking feeling. There's a lot of ways that our sort of physiology and or energy move when we're triggered. Becoming really aware of that. And I love helping families with this because it's something that has helped me so much, especially around children who trigger me, which they all will at some point. That if we can make sense of the emotional experience, then we can have more say and more sort of self-mastery around our emotions about what happens next. Okay. So of course, we want you to have less of these triggers over time. And that's like a whole separate piece. But I would say right now in the moment, being aware that there may be some preconditions that contribute to being more easily triggered. There's a perception database from, you said, bad marriage memories that you need to sort of update and differentiate from what you're currently experiencing. So you could say, these are my children, not my spouse, right? My children are not my spouse. Like even something as simple as that, or this is a different day than that day, that bad day, 2 years ago. We're in a new day, new moment. And I've had to do this for myself too, by the way. So I've been there. I've had to like literally tell myself this is not the same thing, and help my anxiety sort of relax, kind of subside by reassuring myself and disrupting that thinking that, oh no, here we go again, right? Or like, oh God, this always happens, or whatever is sort of perpetuating that idea that we're stuck in this moment and it's going to turn out the same as our bad memory. Okay. So these are some like kind of cognitive interventions you can do in the moment. And the other very much physiological, like find your thing that will help you to soothe yourself, bring your kind of emotions back down to baseline as you work through the emotion and self-emotion coach. These are all skills that kids need too. So if you work on these skills, then you can pass them on to your kids. And that's a really powerful thing. Claire, if you want to talk through this more, you can always go to my website at the calmempoweredparent.com and, grab a free strategy session or grab my free guide. And it's a place for you to get started with some actionable tools and steps. Okay. We'd love to meet with you and talk through specifically and go through a step-by-step process of taming a trigger, which I've learned from my very talented coach and have been able to help my clients with as well. So let me know. Also, if this is something that you are experiencing chronically, it's important for me to kind of put a PSA out there that, this could be treatable PTSD. And so you may want to explore that with your health professionals to see if if like some direct support from a therapist would be the next step for you as well. So even though I've had luck supporting some of my clients as a coach, there's also a lot of therapeutic, resources out there that can help you overcome triggers as well. I am especially good though at helping you figure out what's going on with your kids and what you should do in front of your children that would be supportive of their emotional growth and yours as well. So maybe both. I've had a lot of families work with me who also have a therapist on their support team. So let me know if if you'd like to have a conversation about it further, Claire. I'm here for you. All right, so that is another Ask Vanessa Anything. I'm so happy that each and every one of you who've had a chance to tune in has had a chance to maybe glean some insights here from other people's questions. It's so good when people have the ability to identify what they need and reach out. That is so admirable. And if you also have a question of something you'd like support with, you can go over to Facebook and join our Raising Our Resilience parent group. You can just look that up, Raising Our Resilience parent group. It's a free Facebook group where I do occasionally drop in and give some trainings and tips and also, gather questions for these Ask Vanessa Anythings. Better yet, you can go to my podcast website, The Calm Empowered Parent, scroll to the bottom and fill out the form where we can then bring you on even live potentially or not, if you'd prefer not, but definitely address your question in a future Ask Vanessa Anything. All right, and for that, I'll just send you off lots of love to each and every one of you in your journey of becoming a calm, empowered parent, raising confident, healthy, and resilient children. All right, lots of love to you each. Until next time, bye for now.